Sarah Quinn on Mix 94.1. September 25th at the Hall of Fame Comic-Con. We'll be at the Canton Civic Center. The day's gonna be packed with vendors and costumes and guest artists and creators who shaped pop culture and the characters we know and love. And speaking of which, today I have the pleasure of being joined by a legendary comic book writer who has influenced so many superheroes that you know and love, both Marvel and DC. Mark Waid. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Sarah. You know, if you're going to make it broadcasting, you gotta get the energy up. Okay.
You're right. You're right. Hold on. Let's redo that whole thing. No. But no, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to somebody whose career has spanned back to before I was born.
True. True. Yes.
Yes, back in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And I gotta ask, because you're freelance and you're still actively writing. When it comes to writing and writing styles, what would you say is the biggest shift that comics have seen between back then and now, present day?
That we are listening to a wider audience and we're paying attention to a wider audience. I mean, that's the thing that's the biggest shift in the industry altogether, writing, publishing, all of it, is that 30 years ago when I broke in, comics was, 90% white guys. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because we were trying to be exclusionary. It was just that for years and years, we had been publishing comics for white kids, for white boys. So there wasn't a huge line of people that weren't white boys wanting to be in comics. So, and we've, there's still ways to go. There's still, there's like in any medium, there's still a way to go. But that's the biggest shift, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Yeah, I'm actually part of that. I wasn't into comics when I was younger. I didn't really get it.
Because we weren't publishing comics for you.
Yeah. But when I was 17 years old, mm-hmm. I discovered Harley Quinn.
See, I thought, because she has now supplanted Sandman as the breakout character, as the invitation character. Yeah.
Yes, and that's actually why my on-air name is Sarah Quinn. That's how much of a fan I am of Harley. She was what got me into comics. So yeah, I think that's so interesting how superheroes have just taken over pop culture. Did you ever think that this medium would grow to be like so crazy?
No. Did I ever think that I could get on a bus with a comic book in my hand and read it in public and not be laughed off the bus? No. When I was growing up, comics were exclusively for children or dumb adults. That was the shorthand in media, in TV shows and movies of the 60s, 70s, 80s. If you wanted to show an adult being an idiot, have him read a comic book. And that's no longer the case, which is terrific. I never saw this.
Yeah, theme parks being, and not to mention, the films. We got to talk about the films.
Yeah.
So they take a lot from source material, but they deviate a lot. In your opinion, which film do you think has stayed true to the source material the best?
That's a good question. Doctor Strange probably is way up there. But the Marvel ones in general, I think, do a very good job. Even when, say, with Guardians of the Galaxy, where they broke from the comics altogether, it was still in the spirit of what, it was still an interesting movie. And the nice thing about working at Marvel is that no matter how much the movies make, how much energy the movies have, how much influence the movies have, no one at the movie studios comes to us as writers and says, okay, you've got to do it our way now. Kevin Feige, who runs Marvel Studios, still understands and honors the fact that the tail does not wag the dog, right? The material still comes from the comics. So the comics are sacrosanct, which is, I think, terrific.
Absolutely. And you've touched on a perfect point, because I wanted to ask you something. So I have a performance and acting background. And when it comes to developing my characters, I go to my source material and then I flesh it out from there. But you are my source material. You're a writer.
Right.
So how do you start the creative process? How do you start building your characters and your worlds?
I mean, same thing. If I'm working with characters that have already been created, then I just, like you, I go back to the source material. I go back to the earliest author intent and try to find what made that character special in the day. If it's a character out of my own head, then I can write any kind of character I want to write, but what I have to do is be able to find some bit of myself in that character, right? Like,
Right.
as an actor,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You have to find, you can act, you can act a character that is nothing like you, but as long as you can find that one bit of you in that character, then you have a connection. As long as I have that, I can write anything.
Of all the characters you've worked on then, which would you say you have the most of yourself put in it? I mean, you put yourself in all of them, but
I do. It's probably the Flash.
yeah,
Probably the Flash. Probably Wally West, the Flash.
Wally.
Because he was very much my alter ego at that time. He speaks like I do. He sounds like I do. He has the same rhythms I do. He has the same voice, the same concerns. Yeah, I pretty much just imprinted myself on Wally.
If you could cast Wally West, who would you cast in that role?
Wow, that is tough, because I love what Grant Gustin does on the TV show. Barry. I don't have a good answer. I'm sorry to crap out on you here, but I have no.
Is that the first time you've ever been stumped? Because if so,
yep.
Well, you see here, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Gonna get a flex a little bit on that. So I have a couple more questions here. When I told people that I was going to be talking to you, I received a long list of they're like, you need to talk to him about Kingdom Come. You need to talk to him about The Flash and Wally West. And you need to talk about Superman Birthright and blah, 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 blah. But I know the fan favorites. I know that.
Right.
What has been your favorite arc to work on? Is it Wally West or is it something else?
It's Superman Birthright.
Superman Birthright.
That's been my favorite, because I have a special attachment to Superman. He's always been my favorite character, and that Superman Birthright was my chance to basically write a love letter to Superman and to show you why I love that character. And the best thing that comes out of that is when people approach me at conventions or book signings or whatever and say, I didn't like Superman, or I didn't think he was interesting until I read this, and now I get it. And that makes me feel really good.
Is there something about Superman Birthright that you're still proud of, that you were able to get into that storyline, that you really wanted to get in there and you were like, yes?
Maybe the idea that the symbol of the S family, that stands for hope. That's probably it, because that's neat that I was able to infuse that into the Superman comics. And then it's been on TV, it's been on movies, it's been like, that's now the common accepted thing about that. And that as a writer, as somebody who has taken so much from these characters as a fan, the ability to be able to give something back, right, that has legs, that lasts, that is part of the mythos, that feels great.
The fact that you influenced a character so much so that now it's permanent.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So if there are any, because you've touched on pretty much everything, but is there a character that you have not worked on that you would love to be able to do so?
That is tough, because, and I talk with my editors about this all the time. I've been doing this for over 30 years. There's nobody I haven't written. And and the ones that I haven't written, like Wonder Woman or Thor, are characters that I like, but I don't have any real affinity for. So maybe I've never written a Batman book. I've written a story here and a story there, but I've never written Batman for any length of time. That might be fun to take a swing at.
Is there a storyline then, to kind of like piggyback onto that? Is there a storyline that you would like to explore on some of the characters that you've already written for, that you haven't gotten to a chance to, or that you have an idea of that you think would be cool?
That's tricky, except for Superman, which we'll get back to in a second. The answer is no, because I don't like to go back to characters that I've already written, because even if I have what I think are good ideas, I'm competing not only with my work back in the day, but I'm competing with people's memory of my work and their nostalgia for my work in the day. So no matter what I do now, people are going to go, it's almost as good as it was back in the day, back when I was 13 and I was reading it. Superman's the exception. I still have a Birthright sequel in me, and there's a good chance we might be able to find a place for that at some point.
I'd love to read it. That would be very cool. Okay, do you have any cool memorabilia that you're really proud of Superman or Superman, but your favorite one, like I know you've got a ton, but your favorite one that
Yeah, I had somebody make a Phantom Zone projector for me. And it lights up and everything. It is
What?
so awesome. It is so awesome.
What?
Yep.
That's really cool. Oh my God. Was it a fan that made it, or did you commission this?
I commissioned it because it commissioned it from a guy, because I live in Los Angeles. This is where movie props are made by everybody.
Right.
So
Right.
I found a guy who made me an Ant-Man helmet. He made me a Phantom Zone projector. I love the stuff that I could actually find in the Fortress of Solitude. That's what I like having around.
That's so cool. So back in the day in 2011, you launched a free digital comics website called The Thrill Bent. And you launched, it's basically, you launched an open letter that says an open letter to young freelancers.
Yeah.
So that tells me you have a passion with helping people wanting to break out into this medium. What advice would you give to people that want to break into writing or illustrating comics?
The great thing about the last few years is that the internet has completely democratized the process. Like back in the day, you had to work out a pitch and give it to me at a convention, and maybe I would read it, but probably not. And here's my pages that I'm sending you from Oshkosh, Wisconsin to New York, and hopefully you'll look at my pages at the bottom of a slush pile. That's no longer the way. The way is, if you want to be in comics, you're in comics. Find yourself a website, create one or find one, do your own comics, publish them online. And I guarantee you that the bigger publishers are looking at these things, looking at these online comics for new talent for two reasons. One is that it's a really good showplace for your work. But more than that, if I, as a publisher, as an editor, am looking at your comic and I see not only that it's good, but you've published it online on a regular basis, like every month or every week or whatever it is, but you've hit your deadlines, then you have a work ethic, and I respect that, and that gives you a leg up.
You bring a really good point there, because I'm actually part of a bunch of Patreons of webcomics that I really enjoy, and even a cartoon that I funded and I've been following for back in the day. And she finally, I think it's Dark Horse, that she's now a part of. So yeah, you make a good point there. Are there any sort of amateur comic book writers or illustrators that you follow that you're like, hey, you're going to go somewhere?
I don't want to single people out, but there are a couple. There are a couple I've looked at and thought, I'm going to check back on you in 6 months or a year and see where you are.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So it may be you, listener. You don't know.
It might be. Start posting some stuff that Mark would be like, wait, hold on a second. This is reflective of my life. Just maybe. You'll get an email. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to talk with me. Once again, you can meet Mark September 25th. Come out to the Hall of Fame Comic-Con at the Canton Civic Center. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anytime.